Episode 1, horror. That's what it is, ladies and gentlemen. We are talking horror today. And this is going to be good. This is going to be exciting.
That's right. First episode. I'm excited, man. Thanks for having me here. This is going to be great. You know, I'm kind of getting that rhythm back. You know, I did a couple videos here last week, so I'm still kind of trying to find that groove now that I'm starting to do content again. So this is cool. I'm glad you invited me over here to your channel to hang out with you and your subscribers.
But I wanted to be Michael Myers. And of course, back in 1995, you couldn't get what you get. And the underground independent artists now that are dishing out masks like that, like you couldn't get that shit back in the day. You could not get it. Freddy Krueger in his glove and his mask and his hat, no problem. A Jason mask, you know, a Jason
sort
mask.
of decent, not great.
You get Michael, forget it. So I went into Malabar's in Ottawa, Ontario, and it was a costume shop. And I went in there and I was looking for something and I noticed what you have there up on the shelf, top shelf, kind of, it was like, oh, you know,
right,
this light shining on, and I'm looking at it and I'm going, oh, and of course, in my mind, I think that looks exactly like Michael Myers. I'm going, because we had nothing else to compare it to. And I'm looking at this and I'm going, holy shit, it's fucking Myers. And I saved $60 from my allowance or my mowing the lawn, whatever the fuck I was doing. And I went over to and Halloween was coming up and I wanted to be Michael Myers.
The same thing, you know, like back then, you know, as a young kid back in '89 and, you know, through junior high and all through high school, it was the same thing. You know, I showed you this picture. This is me and a friend of mine in high school. I did the same thing. You know, this is a shot of me sitting on my friend's car. I wore a black dress shirt now, okay? And like you said, the mask looks nothing. I mean, it looks nothing like Michael Myers.
It's a dress shirt. He's going out in style, and I love that fucking 90s car behind you.
And I'm wearing black dress pants, and I'm wearing literally like my black church shoes that I would wear, you know, to church on Sundays with the family. And like, this is like a double exposure shot, you know, because I was doing photography in high school. Sure. And it's probably the closest I got to a quote cool looking Michael Myers picture. But yeah, you know, back in the middle 90s and the late 80s and throughout the 90s, we didn't have, and we weren't thinking any of this stuff like, you know, cosplay and like, you know, got to have the exact outfit. I just went in with whatever I could throw and improvise and put together.
What's going on, everybody? That was the very first episode on November the 4th, 2018. Oh my God, nearly 7 years ago. It is now episode 200. The date today is Wednesday, June the 16th, 2025, 7:21 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My name's Dave McCrae, coming to you live from the Voice Man Studios of Toronto, Canada. He's Tony Michael in Atlanta, Georgia. Ladies and gentlemen, we are live! We are live, ladies and gentlemen, episode 200 of Two Dudes and Some Bullshit. Tony, we have made it. There's probably quite a few people that didn't think we would make it, but we've made it to episode 200. How are you doing? I see you've got your Halloween shirt.
I feel like I look like two completely different people from that video to now. Boy, the gym has done me well.
Yeah, and I'm actually about 20 pounds heavier there. Or no, maybe about 15 pounds heavier there.
I'm probably about a good 40 pounds lighter there.
Yeah, you are.
Like 150
in
that video. I'm like sitting on like, well, actually, no, that'd be 35 pounds. I'm sitting on 185. So yeah, about 35 pounds of lean muscle mass later. But like, man, like even like my beard looks different. Like I was going through a lot of phases with my beard at that time, just trying to figure out like what I liked, what I didn't like, and whatnot. I even still had the ear studs in at the time too.
And when we first met, you had hair.
I had hair, which I no longer have. I am bald.
That's right.
Yeah. I am Stone Cold Steve Austin bald.
But it was so funny, you know. And by the way, folks, every episode of Two Dudes and Some Bullshit is on my channel. Just look for the playlist. You can watch one all the way right to now, episode 200. And it was funny to watch that, you know, a bit as that was back when we were using Google Hangout.
It was
Google Hangout.
I didn't even have a microphone. I didn't have a decent. No, I had the camera, but I didn't have the microphone.
That's it. Yeah. And our very first episode was November the 4th, 2018. Just, you know, a couple of weeks after the release of
7 years ago.
7 years ago. Yeah. It was a couple of weeks after the release of Halloween 2018. So it was a long time ago, and now here we are, you know, Wednesday, June the 18th. Did I say 16th? I think I said 16th during the opening. I meant 18th, June the 18th, 2025. And we're at episode 200. Yeah, and we're making it an all Halloween episode. Why not? I mean, that's how we sprung onto the scene. And in that clip that you saw, Tony and I were talking about what it was like to be Halloween fans growing up. And if it wasn't for Halloween, you know, we would never have met. And if it wasn't for Halloween, this show would not exist. This channel would the channel itself existed, but I never did anything with it until the announcement of Halloween 2018. And so we owe a lot to Halloween, you know, in a lot of ways. And I posted a photo, the photo that you saw at the very beginning of the show here today, of me back in the 90s with the Michael Myers, or the quote unquote Michael Myers mask on. And you showed photos of you in a similar looking mask. And I believe, you know, people have asked me, was that the Dawn Post The Mask? And I don't remember if it was Dawn Post specifically, but it must have been, because I remember when I was in Malabar and I saw that it wasn't advertised as a Michael Myers mask. Yours probably wasn't either. For copyright and legal reasons, they could not advertise it as Halloween Michael Myers. It was just known as The Mask. That's right. Yeah. The Mask, or the Scary Mask, or the White Face, or something. It had a, you know, a couple different names, but you knew what it was supposed to be. And because, like I said, you know, in the opening of the show, because we had nothing else to compare it to, we thought we looked magnificent.
I mean, for the 80s and 90s, of course. I mean, I had that mask going back to like, well, the first adaptation of that mask was given to me by my uncle in '89, right around when Halloween 5 came out.
Yeah.
And that was like everything. Like I was, you know, like I got my hands on a Michael Myers mask. You
That's
know,
right.
Or what to us was Michael Myers. You know what I mean? Certainly not like what I have now. You know, stored upstairs. But,
right.
You know, as a 10-year-old kid, that was everything. And you know what? I didn't care. You know what I mean? You know, the crazy thing is my friends loved it. People loved it. You know what I mean? Because what I would do is I would paint my eyes black. So you couldn't see my eyes. So my eyes were completely black. That made it look creepier. You know what I mean? So you just had the pale face. You know, I always had the hair back. I didn't have it messy. I always had it slicked.
Yep.
And just I had the black eyes.
The darkest eyes, the devil. Yeah. Well, and what's funny too is that you have a photo of you in a black dress shirt and black dress pants. And what's crazy about that is that the very first time, the year that I got that mask, I didn't have a jumpsuit. Like, I mean, you know, people who, like, I made a post on social media, you know, the other day where I said, you know, I'm joking, but I'm not. Like, I'm not trying to sound ageist, obviously, because, you know, it's not like I'm, you know, 80. But I'm not joking either. You know, when I say, if you're young, like if you're in your teens and your 20s now,
today,
today,
you're lucky.
And you're a big Michael Myers Halloween fan. Oh my
I mean, you can pretty much cosplay it right down to 100% accuracy.
Yes. Well, and somebody had commented on my post and said, well, I wouldn't exactly call the Trick or Treat Studios masks screen accurate. And I said, well, hang on a sec. So
In comparison to what we had.
But I responded and said, well, they're actually pretty damn good. And let's not forget that I'm more talking about, because I said, you young kids don't know how good you have it today. I'm more talking about the independent artists that were not around back then, that are around now, that are making absolutely screen accurate Halloween 1 and 2 and 4 and 5. I mean, that look phenomenal. Now, yeah, you're going to have to, if you're probably going to have to save that lawn mowing, money and spend $500. Yeah, sure. But they didn't exist. And there's lots of, people today who are cosplaying it. I mean, the amount of screen accurate to varying degrees and shapes and sizes of, people. But I mean, the amount of screen accurate cosplaying Michael Myers, and Jason's and Freddy's. I mean, it's insane.
And let me tell you, man, if we had the option back in the day, like if us growing up in the 80s, if Trick or Treat Studios was giving today back then, we would have been grateful.
Oh,
we would have told, like, that would have been heaven for us.
Oh my God.
Like there would have been, you wouldn't have heard anybody complaining because of, again, what we had, right? We had nothing, so if that's what I mean by a lot of these young kids should feel very fortunate, and not nitpick on it so much that,
back in our day,
no, I'm just saying, like they talk down on Trick or Treat. I've seen some of the Trick or Treat studio masks and they're good.
Yeah, they're fine.
Great. Again, if that was our only option back then, shit.
Well, listen,
we've been grateful
for a mass-produced Michael Myers mask that is like what, $60? I mean, the mask that I purchased in 1995 from Malabar in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. I don't know if it's still there. It might be. The store, I mean, not the mask. Was about $55 or something like that.
I was going to say down here, you were spending $45-50.
Yeah, in 1995. Right. In 1995. So what is that for inflation? Somebody in the chat room, check what 1995 $50 would be today. Because now you go to Trick or Treat Studios and you spend $50-60, maybe 70 with shipping, whatever. You're spending probably under $100 and you're getting a mask that looks light years better than what we had, right? Yeah. I mean, maybe it's not like the $500 indie masks. Well, no, there's a reason why those masks are $500. But they are, for mass-produced ones, you can just walk into a Spirit Halloween and pick up. Oh my God! Oh my God! It's incredible, absolutely incredible. Somebody's got to do that inflation for me, because it's just it's wild. But I was going to say that the first year that I got that mask, I also wore a black dress shirt with black dress pants. I also wore the same thing, because even getting a jumpsuit was difficult then as well.
It was really hard. I mean, you could get you could get snow jumpsuits that were thick padded. Like my buddy Devin had one because he also wore the very similar Michael Myers mask, and he wore that. Right. But man, that shit was too thick. I was like, I ain't wearing that shit on Halloween night because it ain't that cold.
There you go.
So I did that. I did the black dress shirt, black pants, dress shoes, pretty much from 89 all the way through early 2000s. That was it, and then I stopped wearing everything for a while. It kind of just out, once I stopped working for the radio station, and I didn't have to dress up, for like a Halloween party or anything like that. Yeah. That was, that was when I retired that mask and I was done dressing up. And then the resurgence with Etsy and a lot of these mask makers out
Cinema
there.
Secrets, I think, with the resurrection mask as well in 2002 or 3. I
didn't get that one.
No,
I pretty much stuck with the Don Post one or whatever it was called, pretty much right through 2007, right till like the very end of working at the radio station, and then that was it until like the last 8 years ago, whatever it was, when I got the newer one. you know?
Yeah, it's wild. Chat room is saying that $50 back then is $105.57 today.
Sounds about right.
So there you go. I mean, plus, if you were ordering that online, you'd probably spend $20 on shipping and, for that mask. You know what I mean? And now you can get pretty good looking masks. I mean, they're not great, but the Halloween 1 mask or the
even the Halloween 2 mask. I've seen some good ones.
But the Trick or Treat Studios Halloween, Kills mask they're pretty good, for
Solid.
$60-$70. They're pretty good. Yeah. They're pretty good. I mean, we would have been losing our minds.
Well, back in the day, absolutely. We would have been grateful for it.
Oh, even the Jason things you see now. I mean, the Jason cosplayers. 100%. I mean, oh my God. Like, if you wanted to be Jason back in 1990, 2 or 89, you got that
generic hockey mask,
that generic $5 hockey mask that everybody had, that, you know what I mean? You knew who you were supposed to be, but it was just crazy, a crazy time. But it was my brother Neil that introduced me to Halloween. He was a big Halloween fan. And he said that one of the reasons why he loved Halloween so much, because of the, the music and the mask and, the character and all that. But he said it was the first horror movie he ever watched that never gave him nightmares. Every other horror movie he'd watch, he always had nightmares over, but Halloween was one that didn't. And so maybe he thought that meant that, so it was just that extra sort of thing that he really liked about it. Meant he could watch it on repeat and not have to worry about having bad dreams. And, he introduced me to it probably in about, 83, 84, somewhere around there. So it was, I was like 5, 6 years old. And there were only, 4 or 5 years old. And there were only 2 Michael Myers movies at that time. And I think your story, if memory serves, it was like you were at a party with a bunch of kids and you were watching Halloween 4.
It was fifth grade. I had was invited to a birthday party. At that time I had only, before seeing Halloween 4, I had only watched Nightmare on Elm Street. Obviously, that was the first.
Yeah.
The Friday the 13th movies and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Exorcist, and some other stuff I can't remember now off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Whatever my cousins were watching or my grandfather was watching. But the big ones were Freddy, Jason, Leatherface, The Exorcist and whatnot. So I didn't even know Michael existed. Had no idea. No one ever mentioned anything to me, nothing, and then it was just by dumb luck. I was at, it was a 5th grade birthday party and I walked upstairs. I forgot why I walked upstairs. Cause where we lived, we had basements. Some areas don't have basements. We had basements, and so you would have your parties in the basement, and put the Christmas lights up around the wall, top of the ceiling, and
of course, shit, I love that shit.
And I would DJ music, cassette tapes, but I would play the music.
Were your basements like the walls, the wood panel walls?
Yeah,
I love it. I love it.
So I went upstairs because the girl's brother was going to play music for a little bit to give me a break. Yeah. And I wanted to hang out with everybody too, because I was there with my friends. And went upstairs and her older sister or brother was watching this movie and I didn't know what the hell it was, but it caught my attention. It was right as Michael sat up and the lightning hit him. So it's at the very beginning of 4 and Jamie's having the nightmare dream sequence.
The nightmare man.
And I was like, what the hell? No idea. I sat down in front of it and I stayed there for the next hour and 20 minutes, whatever it was.
Yeah.
I didn't move, and I became obsessed. And I remember pleading with her, can I borrow this to record it? Because, I guess I can't get arrested now, but we had 2 VCRs where I could,
of course,
record a copy for myself. And so I did, and then obviously went up to the local VHS rental place, the mom and pop shop where we would get our VHS tapes, and started looking for Halloween. Yeah. Now, I've shared this story many times with people, but the only Halloweens that I had access to were Halloween 2, Halloween 3, Halloween 4, and Halloween 5.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until 1993,
Blockbuster.
4 fucking years later, where I could finally watch the original Halloween. For 4 years, my uncle God bless his soul. I've shared this story many times, but every time we would have a family get together, because he knew I was really getting into these movies.
Yeah.
And the only reference that I had to the original Halloween was what I saw at the beginning of 2.
Right.
That's it. That's all I knew. So he would tell me like these, what he could remember of the movie and different points of the original Halloween. So I had to make the shit up in my head of what went down
as you're watching the sequels.
Huh?
As you're watching the sequels.
As I'm watching the sequels
right.
to connect everything together.
Right.
You know what I mean? Then obviously seeing it for the first time, what I had in my head was nowhere near what, I mean, and my uncle did a really good job of explaining things to me and explaining scenes and whatever and whatnot. But it was
sure.
four years, man, 4 long years before I finally, when Blockbuster came to town, and everybody remembers the OG Blockbuster Halloween VHS cover with Michael standing in the front there, right?
Yep.
That was the very first thing that I rented from Blockbuster Video. The very first thing.
Amazing.
Because, it was finally now I get my chance to see Halloween,
That's it.
and see what it was all about. And I was disappointed and let down.
Yeah.
What,
Tony? But Tony!
Totally let down. No, I wasn't.
But Tony, no, it's funny because, we've talked about this before and I've mentioned it too. And again, if you're our age or even older, of course, you get it, it. But there are, there are a lot of Halloween fans that don't realize that, Michael, he wasn't a thing in the 80s. We sometimes think, I think because of Halloween H2O, which was the resurgence for Michael Myers, and, for better or worse, right? You had H2O, Resurrection, Rob Zombies 1 and 2. For better or worse, he was in the zeitgeist. He was, in the pop culture. And Freddy and Jason and, weren't. But in the 80s, it was very, very different. And, Michael, died for all, in the fire in 1981. And then he wasn't around again until 1988. And, people, they don't realize how non-existent he was. And case in point, you had no idea who the fuck he was when you sat down to watch that movie.
No, and the character of him, like you said, he was not a popular character.
No, he wasn't.
Like people were not talking about him like we are today. It was Freddy and Jason.
Yes, 100%.
Michael was pretty much on this, as far as in the pop culture zeitgeist, he was on the Leatherface playing field. In fact, Chucky, you could probably say, was more popular than Michael.
Well, and I'd say this, there was a period of time there, I was even going to go, maybe this is a bit hyperbolic, but I'm going to say it anyway. I was going to go even as far as to say that in that time there, like between 81 and 88, you could even say that Michael was like, saying something like Pumpkinhead. It was like...
No, you're right.
It was like so...
Who? Wait, what?
Like who?
Oh, that Halloween movie?
Oh,
yeah, no,
Halloween.
I don't care.
That people thought you were Jason when you tried to dress up as Michael, and it was a very different thing. And I think there's some people, because he's so popular today and he's so iconic right now, and it's not that, again, maybe I'm being a bit hyperbolic, with the Pumpkinhead thing, but it's not that nobody knew who he was, but it's just that he wasn't anywhere near as popular as Freddy and Jason.
If you were going to go with if you were going to say if this was 1989 right now, or even 1990, okay, or 91, the three core horror figures at that time were Chucky, Freddy, and Jason. Yes. That was the face in 1990, 91. Yeah. That's who was in the pop culture zeitgeist. Chucky was huge, because he had 1 or 2 films at that time that were, successful, whatever success is at, for early 90s. But they were, the Child's Play movie hit. They hit a home run. Leatherface, kind of had its run. But Michael, and again, what really hurt Halloween as well is the 5th film left you on this cliffhanger for 6 fucking years.
Yeah, that's right.
So you had to sit there for 6 years, and pretty much, I remember me and my brother used to sit there and just come up with stories of like what's going to happen next.
Yeah, same.
Where
who is this man in black?
Right, who's the man in black? We used to play we came up with all kinds of fucking crazy. Never in a million years thinking they would go with Dr. Wynn, but
who? Doctor Who?
That was not one of the people that we. When we would come up with.
You mean that guy with the mustache who looks like he's a porn star? It's like,
right.
It's like, now, for God's sake, Sam, Haddonfield's 100 miles. Haddonfield's 150 miles away.
I mean, that guy, right?
That
guy controls Michael. Okay.
Yeah.
Like,
well, no,
we didn't really think that one through, did we?
But to your point, it's that thing where, yes, Halloween was it was and is, and even at that time, the original was, of course, it was a huge film, highest grossing independent film of all time, horror film at least, but I think of all time in terms of independent, and it was big and it was massive, but it wasn't big and massive right away. It's not like when it opened in October of 1978, it was huge. It wasn't until 1979 and the Village Voice article, and it's not like Halloween opened huge. And back in those days, like you see a lot of it, like the Terrifier film where it gets opens here and then it opens there and it opens here and then it opens there. That used to be the norm for independent films back in the day. You'd open here, you'd open there, and you'd if it did well, then you would open in more cities and towns, and things like that. And it was very insidious for Halloween. So it wasn't until, it was in the theater longer. It wasn't until 1979 that Halloween really became what it became. And of course it spawned this little, slasher subgenre craze. But Halloween did Halloween 2, which wasn't as seen upon, or was not as seen, it wasn't as favored as the original. And then Michael was out. So right in the cusp, like between 81 and, like I said, in 88, the prime, there was no Michael Myers. And really the prime is really 80, to 85 or 6.
That's not to say, by the way, to clarify this, because I have a feeling, I have a feeling something's going to come down in a comment here. There were Halloween fans, like Dave,
of course,
myself.
Of
you
course.
had people,
my brother,
who were fans of the franchise, but as far as like in the pop culture zeitgeist of the mainstream culture, MTV, especially MTV. MTV did not have Michael Myers on there. They had Chucky, they had Jason, they had Freddy. Those were the three guys that they had, especially when Halloween would roll around, right? You can always expect MTV was going to have Elvira pop up at some point. Jason was going to pop up, Freddy, Chucky, you know what I mean? Like Michael was not on there. That's not to say there wasn't a fan base for Halloween.
Oh, of course.
Of course there was. But it was kind of almost like underground, you could say.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like an underground fan base in comparison. I think what really helped the franchise was two things. Was the popularity of Scream coming out in 96 and 97, and then H2O kind of coming in there right in 98. And I think because of Scream and H2O with Jamie Lee Curtis returning, that's when you started to see the culture shift with that character, and he became a little bit more popular.
You're 100% correct.
Curse of Michael Myers,
no, not at all.
It injected some blood into the franchise a little bit, but as far as like getting into the mainstream pop culture, H2O is what did it.
Yeah, 100%. So two things. So the golden age of slashers, the prime, like the prime era is that 80 to 85, right? 80 to 85 in there. Once you go beyond 85 into 86, it's not, there's not a stark drop off, but you've turned that corner. And I've talked about this before. So, you're going up like this, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85. Now you're kind of at the top of the mountain, 85, 86, 87, 80. So by the time we get to Michael again, the slasher subgenre's trajectory is already heading south. Yeah. So by the time you get to 1989, nobody gives a fuck. I mean, that's the year of Jason Takes Manhattan. That's the year of A Nightmare on Elm Street
Badass
5.
promo. Badass promo, shitty movie.
Yeah, that's the year of Jason Takes Manhattan, Dream Child, Part 5, for Freddy. I mean, this is where we're at, right? You know what I mean? And so it wasn't like, so by the time 5 wasn't, and that's part of the reason why there's this 6-year gap is because the slasher subgenre was dead, and it was, there's other reasons. I'm just saying that's a part of it. There wasn't this, there's other reasons. There's other reasons.
You had the disappointment of Freddy's Dead. You had the disappointment of Jason Goes to Hell.
And there's a studio thing as well involved. But yes, and Jason Goes to Hell, 93, Freddy's Dead, 91. It's dead. It's over. Right. So to your point, you're absolutely right that when Scream came along, and Halloween was always almost like this fringe kind of, like a Pumpkinhead, like a Hellraiser, right. It was at that time, it was sort of on it was more popular than those, but it was kind of like that. You know what I mean? It wasn't hip and cool to be a Myers fan necessarily. But then to your point, in 98, along comes Halloween H2O. And Halloween H2O is, for all intents and purposes, the hip MTV Scream Halloween of its era.
It was the Dawson's Creek of the franchise. I know what's her name is in there, and I'm not meaning to, but you had Josh Hartnett, so you had young, good-looking guy. You had Michelle Williams, young, good-looking girl. Jodie Lynn O'Keefe. I mean, she was really attractive. I mean, she still is very attractive. I forget the Eric Foreman look-alike dude, but he always just reminded me of Eric Foreman from that '70s show.
Right.
And then obviously you had like LL Cool J, who was really popular, in the '90s. He had a really nice run there in the '90s. I mean, he had a great run in the '80s, but really he had a big run there in the '90s. And then you had obviously Jamie Lee Curtis returning. So yes. That really, like you said, that was the MTV Dawson's Creek of the franchise, and it really sent it in a different level that it had never been before.
It did, and it was because Scream was so popular, and Scream revitalized the slasher subgenre for one last sort of wind. The slasher subgenre has never had another resurgence sort of like it. Now, you could point to Terrifier, but I don't want to get off on a whole thing about Terrifier right now. That's sort of a different... It's not the same. It's a different thing. It's also a different era now. But in terms of having one last sort of wind where it's, it's this kind of thing, that late 90s was it. And they made a Halloween movie at that time. They rode on the coattails of Scream. I mean, they even used the same music in Halloween H2O. Halloween H2O is really just... Really, it's the Scream Halloween, and it looks like Scream. It's the cinematography. It's a very brightly lit soap opera late '90s kind of vibe to it, and people love it. Yep. And that's fine. I don't particularly, but it's fine. And it was because of that movie. For a whole new generation of fans, maybe if you were born in the late 80s, maybe you were born in 88 or 89, I've said this before, but for a lot of Halloween fans, it was either the first Halloween movie they ever saw, it was their introduction to the Halloween franchise, or it was the first Halloween movie they ever saw in the movie theater. And I've had a lot of people reach out to me and say, yep, it was mine. And so it was it introduced people because it was so big and because it was in that pop culture, it came along at the right time. It was able to cross the threshold into the zeitgeist and introduce Halloween to a whole new generation.
Well, and I also think what helped H2O at the time, and it's still one that I will watch occasionally. I don't really sandbag on it like a lot of people do, but it was, as far as you and I are concerned, it was the best Halloween movie we've ever seen on the big screen. You know what I mean? Like, because of the complete utter letdown of Curse of Michael Myers, right. Finding out that Daniel Harris wasn't coming back. Like, I mean, that to me is still like my biggest deflating moment ever in cinema history, because again, keep in mind, this is pre-social media, pre-internet. I mean, internet was around, but it was really like, we didn't use it at all.
No,
Like,
look,
it was just like,
I
it was this thing, like, I'm not going to sit in front of a fucking computer. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So I had no clue that Danielle Harris was not in The Curse of Michael Myers. So
Yeah.
I'm expecting to see her. And then all of a sudden I see some other chick playing Jamie. I'm like, what the fuck is this?
Well, yeah,
like,
I get it.
And then it was like the fucking Titanic for the next, 90 minutes watching that movie. Like, not Leo Titanic. I mean, literally feeling like I was on the Titanic, sinking,
right.
watching this fucking shit show of a movie. I mean, there are elements to Curse that I like. I like the mood and atmosphere. I like the fall vibes and the cinematography and, whatever we've talked about.
Yeah, that's light years ahead of 5.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Hands down. It's like, but it was just a disappointment experience. So when H2O came around and we saw that for the time, it was like, this is a cool movie. This was fun. This, and I wasn't even putting it together at the time like I do now with the music and all that stuff like that. I was just excited that we got a decent film, and that it was a good representation of Halloween. Well,
I think, look, I agree with you. I saw the movie. I saw Halloween H2O 3 times. The first time was, obviously I have to see it at least once. So I went with my brother, Neil and Bruce. We all went to see it. And then at that time in 1998, I worked at a movie theater, and there was a couple of times where my dad was going to be, there was one time where my dad was going to be late picking me up, and because he was working, and so I was like, oh, I'll just go watch. Not because I never loved the movie, but I did enjoy it. At that time, I had a better movie-going viewer experience than I did with Halloween 6. And that's part and part is because it was very pop culture-y, Scream of that era, of that moment.
Because you had Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer, and so, Halloween H2O.
But I knew walking out of it, I was like, this doesn't feel like Halloween, doesn't look like Halloween, doesn't smell like Halloween. It looks like Michael Myers walked out of the set of Dawson's Creek. I knew all of that, but it was still a fun movie-going experience to watch. I had a better time with it at that time. It hasn't aged well for me, and I saw it 3 times. So, the first time with Bruce and my brother Neil. The second time I was on my own because I was killing time waiting for my dad. And then myself and my friend Brian, shout out to my friend Brian, he wanted to see it. So I'm like, well, I work at the movie theater. I can get myself and a guest in for free. So let's go watch Halloween H2O. And every time I watched it, I got more annoyed and pissed off. And I was like,
kind of like me watching Curse of Michael Myers.
Right. And so I'm there to I'm like, why is LL Cool J, like, I knew he was in the movie, but by the third watch, I'm like, why is LL Cool J in this movie? I'm like,
he needs to remind us about those round melon breasts.
It's true. And so, but regardless of what
comb your hair.
Yeah, that's it. Regardless of what Tony and I think of the movie, regardless of whether it holds up for us or not, isn't the point. It isn't the point. The point is it did very well at the box office, about 70 million worldwide. It was a bona fide success, and a lot of people do love it. And it introduced a whole new generation to Halloween, and it came out on the heels of Scream. It was the right time. A couple years later, maybe 1998. It was the right time.
Because it came out in that run with Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer.
That's right. Yep.
The Faculty.
Urban Legend.
Kind of like Urban Legend, right? It kind of, it came in at the right moment at the right time, and it really helped. And look, we're going to get now to the part to the franchise that, is the most controversial. We can kind of skip over Resurrection. But I will say the one thing about Resurrection is that it kept Myers' name, people talking about it. Whether you like Resurrection, I hated it. I did. I finally watched it recently, like within the last year or two for the very first time, like completely from start to finish. Whenever I bought it, because I didn't. You
big ass ball busting bitch.
But it just it is what it is. But before getting to the 2018 film, again, people can say what they want about Resurrection and even about Rob Zombie's 2 films. Without those, it doesn't keep Michael's name. I think that's what those movies, again, really helped the franchise and it helped the brand and it kept the name in pop culture.
Well,
Yes, we had a Jason movie. Yes, we had a Freddy movie, but they didn't stick the landing like Rob Zombie's movies. I mean, you can say what you want. At least Rob Zombie stuck the landing to where it kept Michael's name relevant to where we got the 2018 films, right? As bad as Rob Zombie, and like I walked out on Rob Zombie's second one. I like Rob Zombie's first one. I've always complimented his first film.
Yeah.
It's one that I still watch every October. It's in my Halloween, movie selection of the films that I watch from the franchise. I think he did a good job. He gave us Rob Zombie's version of Halloween, and I kind of knew going into that film when I saw it, what to expect, and that's pretty much what I expected. So for all the negative that has been said, the positive that I always try to look at it as is it kept the name Michael Myers in pop culture and people talking about it.
Look, dude, you're 100% correct. I agree with everything you've said. I've even mentioned that before, on this channel when talking about how, Michael is so popular today. He is like, and that's what we mean by he wasn't always like this. Like pre-1998, this wasn't Michael Myers. I mean, if you're like, again, if you're 18 years old, if you're 25 years old, maybe even if you're 28, 30 years old, you might not remember that Michael wasn't always this popular. he was, like I said, nobody gave a shit about him in the 80s. I mean, really, generally speaking, nobody did. And so you're absolutely right. And it's for better or worse, whether it's good movies or bad movies, Freddy was non-existent, Jason was non-existent, and Michael yes, he had some bad Resurrection, Rob Zombies, but he had some good movies in there, and he's always been there. And it's one of the reasons why I say, too, that...
And of the three, the core three now, between Freddy, Michael, and Jason, Michael managed, like I said, Michael managed to stick the landing to where studios said, yeah, we want to make more.
Yes.
They ain't make it. I mean, we're now finally getting a Friday the 13th, but it's not even Jason. It's Jason's mom.
Well, and he might be in it, but it's not a film. It's a series.
It's a series, right? And Freddy is non-existent. So of the three, Michael was the only one that studios felt like, oh, we can do more with this character because of the popularity that has, because Michael's character, even when Rob Zombie's movies came out, he was on that trajectory,
right?
He was the king of the fucking mountain, and that's it.
Yeah, you're bang on, and it's why I often say to big Halloween fans out there, and I'm really curious about this. It's been a long time since we've seen Jason Voorhees on the big screen. It's been a long time since we've seen Freddy Krueger. And, and it makes me wonder, all those Fred heads and all those Hawk heads, I don't know what they call them. They're still out there. Yeah. Like they're still out there. And
there is a core fan base, but is it enough?
Well, but this is what I'm interested in. This, people say, oh, Michael's way popular than Freddy and Jason. I'm like, well, yes, but the Jason and Freddy fans also don't have anything to be excited or look forward to or be happy about. Like, you can't say that Michael Myers is way more popular than Freddy and Jason like it's a fair fight at the moment. It's not a fair fight at the moment. There's no Jason movies. There's no Freddy movies. There's no Freddy or Jason anything. So
when did Freddy versus Jason come out?
2003.
So in the last 20 years, there's only been one Freddy movie and one Jason movie.
Correct. And the Freddy movie didn't do that great, and the Jason movie did very well opening weekend, and then had one of the biggest drop-offs percentage-wise.
Talk about sinking like the Titanic. That fucker sank.
History. It sank over 80% in its second weekend. So listen, you can love the remake from '09. That's great, but there's reasons why they didn't make another. I know they were planning on doing something in like around 16 or 17, and then the lawsuit got in the way. But between '09 and the lawsuit, it's not like the lawsuit came into a situation in 2010. They had time to figure it out, but fans didn't show up the second weekend. Where were all of you? Where were all of you? You didn't show up the second weekend.
My guess is that the tits were not stupendous. For those who remember Friday the 13th.
Yes, '09. But it's a fascinating thing. There's 160 people in here right now. Amazing. You guys are awesome. Make sure to hit that thumbs up button, folks. Helps the show. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and consider becoming a channel member as well if you haven't already. Don't tell me what to do. I'll do it if I want to, McCrae. Okay. All right.
Before we get on to the last three here, anything that you want to add in regard? I mean, we don't really need to stick with Resurrection, but as far as like what Rob Zombie did to help keep the brand going in that run he did, I
would just say that, yeah, he did. I mean, I didn't like either of his films. I mean, I like his first movie better than his second movie, if I had to compare. Right. But I was never really a big fan of the first film he did, because it just was, for me, it was a little too stylized. It was a little too different. It was
stalking scene with him and Laurie is really good.
Oh, it's great.
He nailed that scene. That scene is fucking her scream is terrifying in that sequence.
There's good stuff in it. Absolutely. But I it just wasn't my kind of thing. And so I wasn't a big fan of the film. But if I had to compare to the second one, outside of the dream sequence at the beginning, which I think is incredible.
We've said this many times, it's one of the best scenes in all of the Halloween franchises.
Because
it's so intense and so well done.
It should have been the
everything
movie.
You want, mood and atmosphere. And then what the fuck, Rob? Where are you going with this, bro?
It should have been the movie. Yeah,
you're right.
But I'll say that, but yes, again, like I've said, for good or, for better or worse, good or bad, he, in 2007, there was a remake of Halloween and Michael Myers. There was no Freddy. There was no Jason. You know what I mean? There he was. And so,
which we can say, I think it's safe to say, we have a little bit of thanks to Leatherface for that with the remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And the success of Texas Chainsaw Massacre with Jessica Biel. By far, I think everyone has agreed on this. That's probably the best remake of the remakes.
I would say so.
That has ever been done. So yeah, I think certainly Leatherface, the success of that certainly helped, and the studios were like, yeah, sure, let's do another Michael movie. It's only been 5 years, right?
That's it.
At the time.
It. Yeah, and they.
When did Resurrection come out? 02? 01?
2002. Okay, yeah. And so they did Rob Zombie, and it kept him there. And then he was quiet for a bit. From 09 to 2018, almost a decade. But then he came back, and then you get the David Gordon Green trilogy, right? And there he was, and it became the highest grossing slasher in motion picture history.
And then it was just crazy to see, like when you and I started doing separately, when I was doing mine and you were doing yours. Bro, I had no fucking clue that there were this many Halloween fans out there. Like, literally, for real. Like, when I started doing YouTube, when did we start? 15? When did we start talking about the 2018 film? Was it 15 or 16?
It was announced in 16. I jumped on in 17. 16.
All right, so it would have been that 16, 17 time frame for both of us. And but that was the most surprising thing was, well, aside from how serious people took the franchise, like, it was like, shit, man, I didn't realize how many people fucking, this was like life or death for some people.
Yeah.
Like, holy crap, can't have an opinion, right? No.
I know.
Like, damn. But
no.
I didn't realize there were that many fans. Like, you just didn't know. You know what I mean? Like, you just think you're in your own little bubble, and you know what I mean? Like, yeah, maybe a few people, but like all of a sudden you start to realize, like, people are watching you and they're liking it, and they're like, wow, and these are these shit, there's more people that are into this than I am.
100%. And these are these fans that, a lot of these fans are fans like you and I who have always been there. But then you have those fans that became fans in the 90s, right? Because of Halloween H2O.
Also because of their age. They could have been young at that time too.
Exactly. No, that's my point, right? And so now you're having all these different generations of fans. And so it makes that's why I say I'm very curious to see if this Crystal Lake series is really good. And remember, folks, it doesn't have to be amazing. It doesn't have to blow your socks off or change your life or, force you to walk outside nude and screaming and, looking up into the sun and, oh my God, it doesn't have to change your life. The Crystal Lake television series just has to be pretty good. Really, because the bar is so low for most of you Friday the 13th fans that even if it's a 7 out of 10 or a 6.5 out of 10, that's probably a fucking win.
Honestly,
as far
do you
as
know
I'm
what I'm
concerned.
hoping it does is I'm hoping it breathes some life into Friday the 13th. I can't even fucking talk.
10th? Yeah, well, that one too.
Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
Friday, that's some serious
man.
draw.
Friday the 13th.
That's some like King of the Hill shit right there.
Bobby.
Yeah, but like I hope it does, and that it all of a sudden the studios go, hey, maybe we need to bring the hockey mask back to the big screen.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. I mean, it's, but I am curious, if they can get the Jason, the Friday 13th, whatever is going to happen, if they can get that in order and it's really good and people are like, oh, and build some momentum. And if they can get their, shit together with Freddy, whatever they do, big screen, small screen, whatever the case is, if Freddy and Jason can come back with a certain level of triumph like Michael did in 1998, but relative to where we are today, not in the same way, of course, because that was 30 years ago, but relative to where we are today and what it means today. If Freddy and Jason can come back today and hit the pop culture in the same sort of way, I'm going to go out on a limb, and some Halloween fans might laugh at me for saying this, but I'm going to say, look out, Halloween fans. Because Michael's really popular right now. Yeah, but that's because he's the only guy on the block. And there's probably Hawkheads and Fredheads that are just waiting. They're just waiting. And all of a sudden, holy shit, look at all these fans.
I also think it's not a bad
No, it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing.
I think we need Jason and Freddy to make another run.
100%.
You know what I mean? These are characters that should not be sitting idle like this. I just watched, when Friday the 13th passed, I watched, I didn't watch many, I watched a couple, that day, not my usual like marathon, but, just enough, to kind of give me the taste and whatnot. And,
let me guess, you watched part 2 though, right?
I watched part 1 and I watched, part 4 actually.
Ooh, skipped over Ginny.
I did not watch her. Well, we got 3 Friday the 13th next year in 2026.
That's true.
So, I got plenty coming my way. I just wanted to do something a little bit different. Usually I do watch 2. I was going to, but I didn't. It was just kind of one of those, I didn't, whatever. But,
I gotcha.
it's not disrespecting the Halloween franchise. And Michael's had a hell of a run here for the basically 20 years, right? I mean, might as well say it, for the last 20 years. He has
almost 30.
Owned. Yeah. If you go back to H2O,
yep.
He has owned it. And, we kind of need Jason and Freddy to, take the reins for a while and bring some life back into the horror slasher fan base and just give us another run like we had in the 80s. It's not going to discredit Michael. It's not going to take away any of the success that Halloween has had. Whether you like the last 3 movies or didn't like the last 3 movies, I think that there's an audience for the last 3 movies. I think that there's, it's kind of like, I compare them to the prequels in Star Wars, like when the prequels came, I was a fan of the prequels. I didn't like the first one, but I really liked the following 2, especially Revenge of the Sith. But we didn't have social media at the time, but you did see a lot of negative reviews from a lot of OG Star Wars fans. Now you've got these young adults who grew up with the prequels, huge fans.
Yep.
And Hayden is getting now his due and the love and, the respect and whatever and whatnot. I think you're going to see that with the same thing with the trilogy here that David Gordon Green did. I think with our age group, some people liked it and some, it didn't land for some others. There isn't really a desire for me to rewatch those movies. I feel like I've seen them enough. I mean, if my girlfriend wants to watch them, I'll suck it up and watch them with her, and that pretty much will be it. But it's just not there. But I'm not saying that they're bad movies. It's just like, if I want to watch Michael, I'm going to go to the first 4 films and maybe Rob Zombie's Halloween, and that's it. And even though Michael's not even in Halloween 3. Which we should talk about before we go to Q&A, because we are talking about the franchise as a whole. We can't leave the ugly stepsister out.
No, but, well, look, I agree with you. My feelings on the David Gordon Green trilogy have not changed. They've never wavered. I thought the first movie, I think the first installment in that trilogy is my favorite of the 3. And then it goes in order. Like, I would go 18 kills and ends. I am not a hater of Halloween Ends. I'm not
hating on them either. I don't want anyone to get that impression.
No, I don't. No. I don't think they will. But I know that some people just absolutely despise Halloween Ends. And that's great. If you do, that's great. If you do, and you can defend your reasons why beyond it's fucking shit. Okay, well, I understand you think it's shit. Now you have to tell me why you think it. And if you can do that, I think that's I don't want to, us all to agree. For me, I don't particularly like it, but I don't particularly hate it either. I've said this from the very beginning since I've seen the movie, and I did my review on the channel. I said, the movie actually was not half bad, ironically, until Michael Myers showed up. and then it was like,
he ruins his own movie.
Yeah, he kind of does.
Bastard.
And so they had something there that I think should have been the catalyst for a anthology TV series. Which was the Corey Cunningham story. And I think they should have just played it safe, delivered sort of something a little more routine of what to expect, but they did it safely. Michael Myers, Jamie Lee Curtis, just kind of focused on that and did the Corey thing, for something else. But anyways, I've talked about that on my channel ad nauseum, but I will say that I agree with you. I think, like a lot of things, I think in retrospect, time allows us to look back at certain movies or television shows a little more favorably. And this may very well happen with this as well.
Yeah, I think as you and I get to our 60s and this young fan base that's young right now with Halloween, I think you're going to see a resurgence in the popularity of these 3 films with that particular age group and demographic. Yeah. And it makes sense, and it makes sense for people like us, who appreciate the first, the second. Not saying that they don't, but that we tend to maybe lean towards more the first 4 films in the franchise, and that's kind of our wheelhouse. That's our go-to when we want to watch, Halloween movies and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I think that, and and say what we want. There's Rob Zombie. I know for a fact there's people who love both Rob Zombie's movies.
Yes.
So there's even a fan base for that. And as those movies get older, you're seeing that those are their favorites. Those are the ones. And mainly because when Rob Zombie's first one came out, that was a newer adaptation of the character that we had never seen before.
That's right.
So that's where you can see a lot of people who tend to lean towards his version, because that's the version of Michael, the WWF big guy,
6'8". Yeah.
Right. That's what they want. So that's the cool thing about this franchise. I know people have done the whole choose your adventure. I don't think it's necessarily choose your adventure. I just think there's enough there for everyone to have a little piece of something and to appreciate, enjoy it, whatever it is, whether it's the David Gordon Green trilogy, the Rob Zombie 2 films, or the 90s Halloweens, with, H2O and Resurrection, or the 80s and, going back to the original. Yeah. You've got something for almost everyone.
You do. And look, I mean, I agree with you. And if you're not new to my channel, you know that I love to rib on Halloween 5 or Halloween Resurrection. And I like to have fun with talking, that's fucking shit, it's dog shit, all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, I've said this many times, you love what you love. And it doesn't, I don't care if Halloween 5 is your favorite of the series, you're welcome here. You're welcome here. You're welcome to express it and talk about it. And I think that's amazing. But I think it's important that at least for me, because I see some fans going, oh, this is cool. It's like a choose your own adventure. And it is, but it is by accident. I mean, let's not pretend, let's not pretend that they structured it that way. We got to choose your own adventure because of sheer incompetence, because they didn't know what the hell to do, and they didn't know their ass from their elbow what the hell they were doing. And now we have this choose your own adventure. Okay, that's great. Oh, that's a nice one. If that helps you sleep at night, sure. Okay. But we had these stops and starts and stops and starts and stops and starts because of incompetence. And so, but you are correct in saying that because of this mess, there's a silver lining for some fans to look at this mess and go, well, you know what? Hey, we have all these. We got the good, the bad, the ugly. We got this. That's actually one of the reasons why, and we'll jump over to the chat here in a second. It's one of the reasons why I don't particularly feel, maybe I'll feel differently once we get to 2028 and it's the 50th year anniversary. But as right now, because we have so much. And listen, if a movie's coming out tomorrow, I'll be there day one. If they announce a series, I'm going to be sitting my ass down on my couch with my munchies watching it. I mean, of course, I'm a fan, but I feel content. I feel okay. And it is because we have the good. We have so much. We have so much. The good, the bad, that version, this version, that version, this timeline, that time. I don't feel like I'm missing anything. And so if Variety or Bloody Disgusting announce tomorrow that they're remaking Halloween again, I'd sit there and go, again? So it's just going to be little 6-year-old Michael Myers killing his sister on Halloween night, being locked up. We've seen this already. I don't feel but Dave,
we'll be there watching it.
I'll be there watching it because maybe, I always hold out hope that there's going to be a chance that it's like, holy fuck, this is amazing. But how do you feel? Are you
Well, I do think before we talk about the future, I think we need to close with
Halloween 3.
The best one in the entire franchire. Halloween 3. Season of the Witch. People are going to take me literally as I said that.
But you Tony!
The Ugly Stepsister. Look, say what you want. I can remember being a kid growing up, despise the movie. As I've matured and gotten old, well, we'll use the word mature loosely. As I've gotten older, that movie's grown on me. It's one of my favorites in the franchise.
You're not alone.
I will watch that one every single year as it gets closer to Halloween, because it's such a great Halloween movie.
What's that line? What kind of question is that, Dr. Chow?
When it's like, where do you want to sleep? Bro met her like an hour ago.
Oh, listen, I've met Tom Atkins.
Tom Atkins, man, that is the Playboy player.
My Tom Atkins story is this. Quick. I'll make it quick. I was at Mad Monster, Arizona in July of 2023. Of course, I played Freddy Krueger in Dylan's New Nightmare. And I am sitting beside, it's myself, Miko Hughes, he's signing, and Nora Hewitt and her wife are putting me in the makeup and everything. And Tom Atkins is sitting across from me signing, and he's been there all day, and he's been watching me over these 3.5, 4 hours getting put into this makeup. And we've been making eye contact and, making faces at each other. And by the time the makeup came on, it was really on me and I got the contacts and everything, I'm looking at him and I'm giving him the eye and I'm going like this to him, we had a good time. And anyways, he came over and he's like, I just want to say this looks fantastic. Really, really nice, man. Very, very, very sweet. And the one thing I take away from it, other than the fact that he's a really nice guy, is he had the softest, silkiest hands I've ever felt in my life. I don't know if he's what kind of moisturizer he's using.
Women love him, man.
I'm just saying it goes with his kind of sexy Tom Atkins persona. And Nora Hewitt said the same thing. Nora Hewitt afterwards, Tom, if you're watching, we love you. When he walked back to his seat, Nora turns to me and goes, "My God, his hands were smooth." And I was like, they were!
It's like you almost expect that though, right?
Oh my God.
I don't expect anything less.
I was turned on. I was like, these hands are so silky, Tom. What's going on? Anyway, that's my Tom Atkins story. But yeah, I forget what the...
Season of the Witch is, to me, it's almost like the perfect Halloween movie. The only curse that it is, it's that it's in the franchise that has You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yep.
But like it has everything you want: mood, atmosphere,
Yep.
great kills, good sci-fi movie. Like I said, it is always in my rotation as we get approached, the closer to Halloween, a day or two before. I'm watching that movie now, and it's definitely in my top four favorites.
Right.
If I was ranking my top four, because I really only watch, four plus Rob Zombies, and that's it. So, and it's right there, and
Yep.
I wasn't like that when I was a kid. I was like, oh my God, Michael's not in there except a stupid TV commercial. You know what I mean? Like, but
Yes.
you're 10 years old, you know what I mean? Like you don't appreciate it at that time. But as I got older and realized what Tommy Lee Wallace and what they were trying to, who directed it.
That's right.
Don't know. Now I understand what they were going for. I get it. And it's like, man, why didn't they give us more of this? You know what I mean? Like, so which is a good segue if you want to,
well,
go.
I'll just say this. I don't like Halloween 3 as much as maybe you do and some people do, but I will say this. It's grown on me a little bit. Okay. I still don't love it, but I will say, and I think the reason is because, and this will segue into the future here. And I don't watch it a lot, but every time I do watch Halloween 3,
soundtrack is fucking awesome.
Oh, the soundtrack.
That's Carpenter's. That Carpenter and what's his name, Howarth, right?
Alan Howarth. Yeah, Alan Howarth. The soundtrack in most Halloween movies, except for H2O and Resurrection, are actually pretty good. Some are better than others, but anyways. So, the soundtrack to Part 3 is incredible. I will say that whenever I watch Halloween 3, though, I am always met with feelings of this is a great premise that I don't think was fully realized to its full potential. Sure. And I feel like it feels a little short. It feels a little small. And I understand that it's 1982, right? And it's low budget. I get it. I totally get it. But I always feel like maybe we can, you know what I mean? I don't really feel the apocalyptic, it's everywhere vibe that they were kind of trying to, like, I get what they were going for and I appreciate it and thumbs up and it's really cool. It's a great premise. Segue now into the future. I think that's where they should focus. Now, I know Michael's 100%. The brand. I know he's the brand. I know he's the face, and I get the likelihood of them not focusing on Michael is probably below 5%. But if you want to know my thoughts, I think maybe a Season of the Witch television series.
Yeah, almost like done like in the Stranger Things type vein,
Yes.
Run it for like 3 seasons, 8 to 10 episodes a season.
Yes.
I know that's what Carpenter wanted to do. So I gotta believe he's gotta have a journal of fucking stories somewhere.
There's so much untapped potential, and with a series. Obviously, now you have 8 one-hour episodes. You have 8 hours as opposed to 90 minutes, and you can build it out, flash it out, characters, really build up that, dystopian, apocalyptic, impending doom, you know what I mean? That it's going to take over all the kids, not just all over America, but here in Canada too, or overseas, or the world, whatever the case is, you can build up to that, of course, and really kind of build this is getting crazy, like what's going on here, and flesh it out. And I don't see it running any more than 2 or 3 seasons, but something like that is interesting to me because I feel it's untapped potential. With Michael Myers, other than, and I know some fans say, why don't we do a Dr. Loomis, Michael, Smith's Grove thing? And I'll just quickly say that, listen, if they do that, I will be there day one to watch it. I will be the first one to jump on here and say, it is fucking amazing. What are we going to do? Just
sit there and watch their sessions and Michael just stare at Loomis?
Perhaps.
I mean, that's basically the premise of like what it is. I mean, he didn't speak a word for 15 years. Loomis tries communicating with him and talking to him and working with him as his psychiatrist.
Yeah.
That's basically the movie, is one man talking to someone who doesn't talk. That's the movie. Like, that's what I would ask someone and say, that's the fucking movie you want. Well, that's what you're gonna get.
Well, not a movie, but in like a
or even a show.
Series.
Like, I mean, basically, that's like there's there's no hook. There's no meat. There's no. Nothing.
I agree with you. And again, I'm going to be accused of being a purist. And then, Dave, you're stuck in your old ways.
I mean, yeah, unless
whatever.
you change the backstory, that's what you would have to do.
But here's the thing. Of course, I'll be there day one to watch it. We all will. And if it's great, I'll be the first one to say, it's fucking amazing. I was wrong. But here's why I don't want to take that risk. For the reasons you said, but also because the foundation for which the Michael Myers character is built is on the foundation of ambiguity, mystique, mystery, the unknown. If you want to do a backstory like they are with Crystal Lake to Jason, it's fine. You're not ruining the enigma because we know where Jason comes from. We know why he's doing what he's doing. He's avenging his mother's death because he saw her beheaded. And all this, we know. You could do it with Elm Street. We know why Freddy Krueger's killing the kids. We know. There's always a mystique and a mystery and an aura around the characters. But in terms of the who, what, where, when, and why, we know that with those characters. With Michael, we know fuck all. And that's part of what makes him attractive. That's part of the allure to this character, the mystery, the mystique, the aura. And if you do a prequel series, you run the risk of ruining that because you're going to have to flesh it out and tell us something. Otherwise, why are we doing this?
He's going to have to kill somebody.
Right. Why are we doing this show?
Technically didn't do, right?
Correct.
You know, if you're going to base everything on, you know, the foundation of what Carpenter, you know, told us in the original film.
Correct.
Now you're changing all of that around, and it's like,
well, you have to make stuff up now to make it interesting, right? And to show us more of him as a child.
I want a Charlie Bowles series.
Right. Well, and then the other thing that people say is, well, why don't we just Charlie Bowles? The other thing that people will say is, well, why don't we do a prequel series with just Loomis before Michael? And I say, okay, well, on paper, that might sound interesting. But I think, again, you run the risk, ironically, even with Michael not in it, you run the risk of actually ruining the Michael Myers character because in my mind, and it's not just in my mind, I think it's very clear when you watch the original film, it is very clear that Dr. Loomis is pretty much an everyday, normal psychiatrist. He's a man of science. He hasn't really seen anything too weird or creepy or crazy in his life.
No, Michael was the first, right?
Michael was the first that he could not crack. That's why he's obsessed. That's why he's gone crazy. I watched him for 15 years, sitting in a room, staring at a wall, not seeing the wall, looking past the wall, looking at this inhumanly patient. Death has come to your little town. He can't crack this kid. If you do a prequel series before Myers to make the show interesting, you're going to have all kinds of Michael. Weird and fucked up children, right? The weird and the unknown. I've never felt that Dr. Loomis was dealing with the weird. I mean, the supernatural kind of weird, that kind of weird. I don't mean legitimately weird kids, but like the supernatural kind of weird. Before Michael was his first foray into this kind of realm. A man of science talking about, the devil's, it's that dichotomy, that struggle, which is amazing. Before Michael Myers, he was living a normal life. He was dealing with kids and, dysfunctional kids and rambunctious kids and kids that came from broken homes and kids, there's some shit going down. But to do a Loomis prequel series before Michael, to make it interesting, you gotta have now we're dealing with the kid named John Mathers and John Mathers. I mean, what are you gonna, you run the risk of topping Michael Myers, of upstaging Michael Myers is what you run the risk doing.
They already tried that in Halloween Ends. So, I mean,
right.
We saw how that went.
Right. And so I feel, now again, if they did do that, I'm ready to be wrong. I'm ready to be wrong. If you were to ask me if I was or if I was the head of, hey, I'd be like, I don't know if we should do that. I don't know if we should. But Season of the Witch, ooh. And because you could remake Season of the Witch and not do it as a sequel to that original film, you just remake it, you could remake it and set it in the same universe as Michael Myers, perhaps. Or, like you said, do Charlie Bowles. Make it an anthology thing. Tell the Charlie Bowles story. Set it in the Myers universe. But Myers, I just think, is done to death. I don't know.
Yeah, I think one or two things they should do. The anthology, Season of the Witch style type TV shows, which they're probably not going to do, but that would be the direction I would go.
Yeah, I don't think
in the now.
Yeah.
I do think the franchise needs to take a beat. It needs to rest. For about a decade at least.
But what about the
and you do
50th
need to-
anniversary?
What about it? You got you got fucking
It's true.
12, 13 films. How many films is there?
13.
Like
Yeah.
13. You got 13 films. Go watch it. Have a ball.
Yeah.
Make a day of it. Sit in a beanbag, in your underwear eating Cheetos and watch them all.
Well, and there's going to be a
That's what
50th anniversary convention and
Oh yeah, I mean, there's gonna be
merchandise
that, but like, there's not, you're not going to bring anything new to the table, and I do think you need to give it a beat. You need to give it a break. And like what we were saying earlier in the stream, I think you need to, hopefully see a resurgence with Freddie and Jason, and maybe let them kind of take the reins for a little while here, duke it out with, not duke it out in a fight movie, but at the box office, give us, 3 Freddie films, 3 Jason films, almost like opposite, 1 year Freddie, 1 year Jason, and just have a nice little 6-year run with those 2 characters in a nice new trilogy with those characters. We need that right now, just because we need something new. You know, as far as the slasher genre goes, especially with these iconic characters. And it's very unfortunate that those 2 are just, they're a footnote right now. They're our nostalgia. Like you and I can talk about the 80s all day long and what that was like, or anybody else who grew up during that time and what it was like to experience Freddie in pop culture. And I mean, do you know the dude even had a fucking 900 number? Not even fucking kidding. Yep. Freddie had you could call Freddie, well, whoever.
Not a 976 number, but a 900 number.
Yeah, for real. Like, it was like that, man. I mean, they obviously couldn't do that with Jason because all you would hear was heavy breathing, and that would just get weird.
That's true.
But yeah, I just think for now, I just think you need a break with Halloween. We've got enough material there to watch as far as fans goes, and look, there's always going to be something new. Something's going to come along. I know a lot of people still are hopeful, especially herself, Danielle Harris, to have like a Halloween 4 2.0. I don't see it's going to happen.
It could happen in an anthology television series.
Sure. But I mean,
not a movie.
Would it be nice to see Ellie Cornell come back and they retcon 5 and they do justice? Of course. I'm not saying that. Would I be there? Absolutely.
100%. There you go.
Totally would be there. And who's to say that that's not what a COD does? Maybe that's what he fucking does. I mean, I think it would be a bad idea, but look, I mean, money's money, and these guys are in show business, not show entertainment.
That's right.
Show me business and make some money.
Yep.
I just let it breathe, let it take a break, and I'm saying not necessarily doesn't have to be 10 years, but within a decade. You know what I mean? From now, when did Ends come out?
22.
22. So it's been 3 years. So yeah, you give it another 5 years and you start reaching that 8-year mark, there probably could be a thirst again, right? Yep. There could be some more like, all right, it's been 8 years since we've seen a Myers film. Maybe that would be the time to maybe kind of feel it out. Maybe the studio start going, what do you think? And then within that 2-year time frame, you start maybe getting in there. But if we go another 5 years or whatever, 8 years, whatever it is, and we get nothing with Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street, that's just going to be sad. I mean, that's just going to be sad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll see how the Crystal Lake series does. And like I said, all you Friday fans, remember, it doesn't have to blow your, I mean, if it blows your socks off, that's great. But I think expectations among a lot of fans is that it, is low. So if it's, pretty good, I mean, like, hey, it's a 6.5, 7 out of 10. That's, a win. And that's what it needs to be. And yeah, no, I agree with everything you've said. I think Halloween, I'm interested in seeing a series with Season of the Witch. I'd be open to an anthology series where maybe they do like a Halloween 4.2 Halloween 4 2.0. You know, it's a, you know, an hour long kind of what if kind of thing. You know what I mean? That might be kind of fun to do.
Sure.
And, you know, fans would watch that. You're never going to get that on the big screen, but, you know, I could see that being sort of maybe a fun anthology thing. But I'm with you. You know, I
I also think the big screen. I think the big screen days are coming to an end too. I think you're gonna have movies always coming out like blockbuster films, but more and more you're seeing these like, man, me and her just watched this freaking fun movie. Kind of reminded me of National Treasure, but it was a movie made by Apple. It was on Apple TV. It's got John Krasinski and Natalie Portman in it. The Fountain of Youth.
right.
It was good. It was fun.
Yeah.
I was like, fuck. And this didn't even go to theaters.
Yeah.
And like the production value in there, I was like, okay. So you know what I mean? Like, I think we're heading more and more into that direction where maybe you end up seeing these franchises on an Apple TV or AMC or Netflix or Paramount or whoever. Because I do think studios are struggling right now, you know, to make a return on their films.
Depending on how big the budget is in the marketing, yes, for sure.
Yeah, depending on the movie. Like, kids' movies are always going to do like Lilo and Stitch. I know that's killing it. Minecraft, I know is killing it.
Yeah.
Kids' movies are always going to. But you know, you look at Mission Impossible. That fucker's not even going to break even. And if Tom Cruise, the king of fucking action, can't even break even, that says a lot. Yeah.
Well, I think when it comes to slasher films, I think. Look, I mean, I don't know. I think part of the reason why you're seeing Crystal Lake and you may see a Halloween television series is again, it'd be a whole other show, but I'll just say that I think part of it, there's a lot of nuance, there's a lot of turning wheels, but part of it is when you're turning around something so quickly, do we just put the same thing up on the screen again? Well, we can't do that. That's not going to bode well. But if we turn this into a television series, whatever that means, it allows us and affords us the time to build the universe. And when I say universe, I don't mean like a combined universe, but to flesh things out. And to enrich characters, enrich a world, to world build, to build it out. And that's something we can't necessarily do in the movie sphere unless we have 5 movies to do. We can do in one season what it could take us 8 movies to do. And so, and I think that's attractive. I think when you've done it all, and yes, Halloween was very successful at the box office, but it was diminishing returns. Halloween 18, huge. Halloween Kills made less. Halloween Ends made less than Kills. And so it was still $500 million, $500 million. But at the end of the day, you could think, well, why don't they just turn around and do another one? It's like, well, I think part of it is what do we do? Are we just going to do this again? You know what I mean? Like the same thing again? Or streaming, that's really hot right now. Interesting. We have more time to flesh things out, characters, world build. You know, it's attractive. It doesn't mean it's going to be successful. But Friday the 13th is trying it.
For studios, you can keep the budget down too. You know what I mean? And
depends.
For the most part,
depends.
Depends, right?
I mean, you're probably still spending a few $million an episode. So
sure. But as long as they're making it back on the streams, right? Like, you know.
Well, they wouldn't make it in the same ways at the box office. It would be it'd be different. It'd be different. Which is why box office is still very attractive to
it is. It's just like
to people. But Friday, look, I don't think the slashers that Jason's not going to movies at the moment because they don't think it'll do well necessarily. I think they want to try something else. They want to, as I've said many times on the channel, they want to make it more than just teens, tits, and blood. And it needs to be in 2025. It needs to be more than that.
Especially in the in this day and age, the type. Well, there's two sides to that. You got to be careful when it comes to Friday the 13th movies. I think you almost get a pass with that because you got to be careful. You don't want to you don't want to go too far off the tracks because I do believe that there is an expectation that people do expect with a Friday the 13th movie. as far as the formula goes. And if you try to really cater to this, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, cater to the modern day audience to keep it kind of more tamed and, and not so 1980s, that could backfire, because I do think that with Friday the 13th, especially that, I think that one gets a pass, because I think people have when they go to see a Jason film, they kind of know what to expect. Now, you just got to get better actors and get rid of the fucking cheesy lines.
So I agree with everything you've said, and I've mentioned this on my channel before, and I'll quickly just say it here. I agree with you 100%. And you cannot remove the DNA of what Friday the 13th is. But it is 2025. It's not the 80s anymore. And it needs to be more than just teens, tits, and blood. Which is
funny, because they're doing everything in the 80s right now.
Right, right.
Everything is nostalgia.
Right. But
shit.
You can't deliver a series of just the first 4 Friday the 13th films and expect it to have longevity. This is about longevity, and this is about staying power. And, if you, even Brian Fuller, who was the executive producer on the Friday series before he left, even he, and in his departing tweet, he said what I've been saying. He said, and he used the word elevated. Now, elevated for a lot of horror fans, because a lot of horror fans like to black and white things, it leaves a bad taste in their mouth, because when they hear the word elevated, they immediately think Hereditary or The Shining or some cerebral, pretentious film they don't understand. But what they have to understand is that, as I've said on my own channel, there are levels to this thing. Think of it like a big skyscraper, right? There's floor number 1, there's floor number 100. And so when we talk about floor number 100, that's Hereditary, that's The Shining, that's that really cerebral kind of, there's really artsy-fartsy avant-garde stuff. But there's what Brian Fuller wanted to do was elevate it from the basement, which is pretty much where the Friday the 13th movies were in the 80s, schlocky tits B movies. He wants to take them out of the basement and put them up to level number 3. Floor number 3 or 4. And that means putting more meat on the bone, having more of a story.
While still giving you the
fleshing
flavor.
things out, while still keeping the DNA there. So now you're going to have better story, more fleshed out characters. You're going to care about these characters. We're going to build it over 8 hours as opposed to 90 minutes. We're going to have we're elevating it from the goddamn basement and putting it on floor number 3 or 4. We're not saying we're going to turn Friday the 13th into The Shining. There's nuance here, right? And a lot of fans, because of the world of fandom tends to black and white things, they miss that. And I understand that. And so you're going to get your gore, you're going to get your blood, you're going to get your Jason kills, but you're not just going to get that. And you can't just do that in 2025 for longevity and expect it to be successful. You could release one movie like that and have it do fairly well, but you can't, release 8 movies like that in 2025 and expect Jason to stick around. And if you want Jason to be around longer than he was in 2009, it's not the 80s anymore. We have to do something. We got to do this, keep the Friday the 13th there, put the DNA there and lift it up a little bit, do this. That's all he meant. That's all he meant. And that's what the new guy is doing as well. They're bringing it out of the basement into the 21st century while keeping the DNA there, and we'll see. And here's the thing, if it's good, and again, it doesn't have to knock your socks off and change your life, and it doesn't have to do that. It just has to be pretty good. And if it is pretty darn good, then winning solves everything and nobody's going to care. Everyone's going to go, it was really great. You know what I mean? And then nobody's going to care that there's more meat on the bone. Here's the real question. What's going to come first? Friday the 13th, A Nightmare on Elm Street, or Grand Theft Auto 6? If you're a gamer, you know that joke. And only gamers are going to get that joke. That's it. And what are the over odds on who's going to be out there first? Is it going to be Grand Theft Auto 6, Nightmare on Elm Street, or Friday the 13th? That's it. I'm going with not Grand Theft Auto 6. Probably. Grand Theft Auto 6 probably will come maybe. Then again. You never know. You never know. All right, let's go over to the chat room, see what you all are saying. Antonis Andriotis sends in $5, says, I finally watched my most anticipated 2025 horror movie last night on digital, Final Destination Bloodlines. Have you seen it? I know Tony has. I have not. Tony, I think you really liked it, right?
Well, I have not seen Bloodlines. That's the one I haven't seen. I've seen
sorry. I thought you
up
did.
through 5. I watched up through 5. No, my girlfriend went with her kids to see Bloodlines.
Gotcha.
They liked it. I know they had I know they had a really good time. Her son really likes the Final Destination movie.
Right.
So yeah, I've seen up through 5. I didn't see 6.
Right. Well, and here's before actually we go to the next one, I just want to say this too. Here's kind of a good example of what I was talking about with Friday the 13th. When you look at what Vincent DeSanti has done with the Never Hike Alone films, those are out of the basement. Those are, those are a little more elevated for Friday the 13th content, right? Now, do I think that the series might be a little more elevated than that? Probably, because they're going to have more money, more resources, more actors, more time. Sure. But, if you really like the Never Hike Alone films, well, that was a bit of a different take, right? That was a little, that wasn't in the basement. There's no boobs in there. Is there boobs in there? I don't think so. But anyway, but it wasn't just teens, tits, and blood, right? It was, this is a bit different. This is interesting. Now we're taking it, and they were successful. So there you go. Anyway, Matthew Farisi sends in $9.99. I'm not sick of Halloween or Michael Myers. I'm sick of bad Halloween movies. Give me a movie worth watching and I'll be there. I'm not sold anyone cares enough to do it right, unfortunately. Well, unfortunately, the longer you go on and you stretch out a franchise, the shittier they'll become because it's just, we've done this.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. Unfortunately, the more you do it, yeah.
I mean, unless you're starting over and doing another remake, which you could do, instead of setting it in 1978, you set it in 1998. And then instead of, it being instead of being 1963, it's 1983. And instead of it
and you can do that. And there's ideas that we've talked about where instead of killing Judith, you make her kind of more the main character this time around, that he's going after her throughout this whole.
I didn't want to bring it up because it was going to extend things, and we do have a whole show on it. Our idea.
Whether you do it in the 50s or today, right?
Yes.
98 is, same concept. That would be one way you could get away with retelling Halloween and giving it a fresh new life.
You could.
Instead of redoing the whole thing where Michael kills Judith at the beginning and then he's going after Laurie. What if Michael kills Judith's friends and he's going after Judith? And, you could still have a Laurie character. Hell, you can have all the big name characters. You could have a Rachel as a young kid and Judith and Laurie are watching Rachel. And then eventually you have a Jamie who comes along down the road as well, too.
That's it.
You could take all the big name characters and reuse them. And just but tell it from a new story. And instead of killing Judith off, Michael's going after Judith throughout this run. You can make 3 films out of that,
folks,
rather than.
Sorry. No, I was just going to say, if you want to hear Tony and I's idea in depth, there is an episode that we have. I don't know what episode it is. Maybe somebody can find it. It's a couple of years ago now, where we talk about a film noir. I don't know if we were talking about a movie or a series where Dr. Loomis is. I think it was a movie.
And Loomis was a cop.
He was it takes place
detective.
It takes place in the 50s. He's a detective from Chicago who's sent to this little town in Illinois, Haddonfield, to investigate a series of murders. He can have a trench coat because he's a detective. It's the 50s. He's got a fedora, maybe.
Yeah, he can have the goatee, the whole 9 yards. Instead of being a shrink, he's a detective.
That's it. And it was a really, really great
idea.
That
would be cool.
That would be cool, man.
Version of Halloween.
That would get me excited.
That would be good. Yeah.
If Bloody Disgusting released an article tomorrow that said that's what they were doing, I'd go, oh. If Bloody Disgusting released an article tomorrow saying they're just remaking Halloween, I'd be like, oh.
Here we go again.
Here we go again. But that doesn't mean it wouldn't be great. Who knows? Matthew Farisi follows up and says, the director and writers who would make that kind of movie I'd want to see probably don't want to make Halloween movies, and who could blame them? Doesn't help that Blumhouse made 3 films in 4 years. 3 films, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 4 years, that's right. Well, I don't think it's that people don't want to make Halloween movies. I think as you said, or as somebody else said here, no, I think it was you, comes down to good stories and ideas. And, as much as we love Halloween, we have to remember that the universe, it's not Star Wars. It's not Marvel. These universes, relatively speaking, are quite small. And so we've exhausted the bandwidth of these universes and these stories. So where do you go unless you just do it again?
Yeah, and again, if you're going to do it again, what I would do is, again, I would pull all the big name characters from the franchise that people love and say, okay, this is the nucleus of the franchise right here with these characters. Yeah. Everyone from the first, all the way up through H2O. That's what I would do. Just the characters now. Pick out the characters that are fan beloved, and then I would just rehash it and tell it from a different way. And like we said, I would focus more on Judith this time, because we've never seen that. Judith basically is a footnote in the first 5 minutes and she's done.
Yep.
But now you have a whole character that you can build around.
Well, our idea was
all new. Yeah. Even if they didn't want to do the period piece, I like your idea of setting it in 1998. That's perfect. You set it in 1998 and Judith is your main character now, but instead of killing her off, we're going to go on this trilogy journey with this new character. There's so much there because we've never seen this character before.
It would definitely be that would definitely be the epitome of the term reimagining. You are not just remaking, you're not just rebooting. Oh, you are remaking and rebooting, but you are also reimagining the Halloween story
and keeping the DNA.
And keeping the DNA. You keep
of
the
these
mask.
Characters that people love, right?
Yeah, it's just, what if Judith wasn't killed?
Right.
What if everything took place? What if Michael wasn't 6? We said this in our own version.
He was a teenager.
We had them together. Like Myers was 15, Judith was 17 or something. You know what I mean?
Right. And 2 years apart.
Yeah. And they went to the same high school. Right. You know what I mean? And maybe
he snaps.
And he snaps. Night, there's a series of killings and Judith knows she suspects it's her younger brother, but we don't know.
But she doesn't
the detective,
know for sure, right? She just knows that he's a little off and a little weird. Is it him? Is it not him?
Right.
And,
And then they bring in this Detective Loomis from the big city, comes into this small town because the small town Haddonfield police force, it's too much. They don't know what's going on. There's murders. We need a big city detective to fucking figure it out. We need Columbo. And he comes in, and one of the reasons why we chose to set it in the 50s was because this was
black and white.
Yes, but also 100%, but also because this was before the 60s. It was before the sexual revolution.
It was the Innocence.
It was the Innocence. It was the nuclear family. It was the Leave It to Beaver era. It was the sitting around the table with your, it was so having this kind of thing happen in a small town is, it's devastating no matter what. But I just mean from a sociological, psychological perspective for the story, it's like, oh my God, like this quaint little Leave It to Beaver Haddonfield, and all of a sudden it feels like it means more and it hits you more when it's 1956. You know what I mean? And people were more socially and culturally conservative. 10 years later, on the other hand, you get, Woodstock and Charles Manson and, all that kind of stuff. Well, 13 years later. But that's a really cool decade to set that in, because of the taboo nature of everything that's going on. So that excites me. I'm like, hey, that sounds interesting. They'd never do it.
No, but in either direction, you can do it. You can do it in a 50s noir style, or if you didn't want to do that because the 80s and 90s are hot right now and popular, set it in 1998 and just restructure this.
88.
Or 88, whatever,
yeah.
88, 98, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And you now focus on this character that we know nothing about. There is no backstory there. And the door is wide open. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just do whatever. And you can still have Loomis as a detective who comes in from the big city, to help out on this case of these, bizarre, murders that are happening to teenagers in this small town of Haddonfield, and they can't figure out what's going on here.
That's it. Teenagers are getting knocked off.
Right. It doesn't even you don't basically what you're doing is you're building you kind of start the movie off like the first act or even the second, like the first and second act aren't even on Halloween night.
No.
Halloween night is the third act. It's the final act of the film.
It's like Halloween 3.
You have this buildup leading to Halloween, whether it's a week before Halloween or a few days before Halloween. And these deaths are happening. You see the deaths. You almost could do it from like a POV perspective, like they tried to do in that movie that they didn't really deliver on. It was terrible. But you can do it from Michael's point of view. Okay, we the audience are seeing these kills happen. we're not naive to know that we know who's doing it, but it's built around that nobody knows what's going on.
Right.
And then, you know, you build it around this like finale, you know, in the third act, Halloween night, and more killings happen.
Yes.
Now Michael's closing in closer to Judith, and he's killing her friends.
Yeah,
you know, instead, you know, like in the first two acts, it's random people.
Yeah.
You know, it's not her friends. Now, when it comes to Halloween night, he starts, you know, he's killing her friends. And he goes after Judith, but he doesn't go after Laurie.
Right.
That makes it even more like, why is he picking Judith and why is he not going after Laurie?
Right. And don't make Laurie a baby. Make her like maybe she's 6 or 7.
Or no, make her 13.
Or 13.
12, 13. You know, she's just a little bit younger than Michael and Judith. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, and maybe that's the reason why. You know what I mean?
It truly is reimagining the story, because some fans go, yeah, but Laurie was a no. Like we're truly, it's Halloween like you've never seen it before. It's a new take on a familiar story, but the DNA is still there. The theme is still there. Boom.
Everything is still
there.
But it's just you know, and like not just Judith, but her friends.
Yeah.
New characters.
Minuteman.
You know, again, you know, like you know, like, but I'm just saying, you have new characters that you're bringing in now, and there's just so much. You have so much you can do with that. Like, why do you want to see the same fucking story? Why do you want? I want to just see Michael 1978 or 1963 kill Judith and then sit in the hospital for 15 years and then go after Laurie. Like, okay,
fans like what they like, but I agree with you. It doesn't excite me at this point in my Halloween fandom, at this point in my life, at 46 years old. It doesn't excite me for another Halloween remake.
Michael going after Laurie again.
It's the same story. I mean, it would be set in a different time because I don't think they'd go to 1963. But it's like it's about a girl who's 16 who gets killed by her 6-year-old brother. That doesn't interest me anymore. I've seen that twice, and one take I really like, the other take I don't particularly like. But I don't need to see that. It's like seeing the origin story of Superman 500 times, right? You know, you get to a point where it's like, well, we don't need to see that anymore. And so, you know, why don't we just kind of do this? And this is interesting. I've always really liked our idea. It would not only make a great movie, it would make a great series. Yeah. Make a great series because you could
do a
really
trilogy out of that.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah. It's fascinating. It's always excited me. Tony and I have a show on our channel where we talk all about it. We dive deep. Josh McKenna, $9.99. Thank you, Josh, and says, I said this before, but I like Scout Taylor Compton better as Laurie. Maybe it's because I had a friend in high school who looked a lot like Scout Taylor Compton. Well, you're not alone because Tony likes her better.
I've said performance. I said, if we're talking about performance, I do like Scout's performance over Jamie Lee Curtis's performance as the character Laurie Strode. Scout was able to go to a place with it that we sort of finally got to see Jamie Lee Curtis get to. We saw a little bit in H2O, not so much. We saw a little bit more in the David Gordon Green trilogy. But what Scout was able to do immediately, what we did not see is the immediate effects, the immediate aftermath of what that character was going through in that first year from the nights of because, like, I mean, for all intents and purposes, did Laurie just go back to school on Monday? Right. You know, like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure her life was just upside down for many, many years. And we never really got to dive into that. Scout, you know, for all that's bad with Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, the good that I can say from it, aside from the opening dream sequence at the hospital, is Scout's performance throughout the whole film.
Yeah, she was very good, and she was
very good. And she's able to give the character a lot more depth, and you were able to go with her on this, like, you know, journey of like, damn, you know, she's going through a lot, you know, losing her friend who got killed, you know, Annie was still alive at the time, you know, and her parents were killed, you know, her adopted parents, I should say, you know, so Rob Zombie was really able to, you know, flush that out. I just wish he left a lot of other shit out of that.
Well, I think the whole part 2, the whole opening dream should have just been the movie. Just carry that out. And
you can still deal with the post-traumatic of all that. And shit. So yeah, I agree with that. As far as performance goes, I think Scout was able to do a little bit more, and I like her performance. I'm not hating on Jamie Lee Curtis or anything like that. But when you look at Jamie Lee Curtis in the first two Halloweens, it's pretty much a straight line, like there's some moments where, it raises and then it just kind of, it's straight. And then in H2O, she starts to give the character a little bit more, and you start to see what that character had been going through for the last 20 years. And then obviously in this, I will say in the 2018 film, she gives the character a lot more and what she's been going through. I didn't buy into the whole Sarah Connor, Ripley, gunslinging, Laurie Strode.
Here's what I'll say about that. The only thing I'll say about that, and I'll let you finish, is I think they should have reversed the arcs. I think when we were first introduced to Laurie in 2018, she should have been like herself in Halloween Ends.
Correct.
And then by the time we get to Halloween Ends, she should have been like herself at the beginning of Halloween 18.
Correct.
And
they kind of did it backwards because who she was in Ends is who we remember her from the first two films.
Right. And it's more believable that she would be that.
That's more believable.
Yeah.
Her progressing to the Ripley, Sarah Connor character, that I can, but it just, there was no progression. It was just like, okay, she's, blowing shit up in her backyard.
That's
like,
it.
That's it. Like, it's like, I'm having a hard time picturing this sweet girl walking home from school with her friends, naive and innocent. All of a sudden she's just blowing shit up.
Well, and I think it was hard too because of the removal.
From one night, by the way.
I was just going to say, because of the removal of Halloween 2. Yeah.
Right. Halloween 2 doesn't exist. So we got to remember that. So from one night where she was attacked and now she's turned into,
That's it.
But if you, like you said, if they did it like that in the reverse, that would have worked.
Yeah, I think so. Somebody should make that edit if it's even possible. Lee the Machine Bauer has been a member for 22 months, sends in a member chat and says, hey, my two favorites, glad to be here. Sorry I haven't been around. Busy as always. Glad I caught this. Much love, my friends. By the way, love my default picture. My friend made it. Do you like my default picture? My friend made it. Cheers. Yeah, looks pretty cool, Lee. Looks pretty cool. I like it. Alex Shambach I've been a member for 22 months, sends in a member chat, and says, when we inevitably get another Halloween movie, is it inevitable? I don't know. Will it be as culturally successful as H18? It came out particularly when the iron was hot and birthed a horror requel resurgence we are still in. I don't know. It's a good question, but
we're in a weird. We were talking about this earlier. We're in a weird phase right now with movies in the box office. It's really. It's hard to say like what's going to do well and what isn't going to do well at this moment. Like, I think you go in thinking it might do well, but it's
well, and I think to your point,
it's hard to say.
Yeah. And to your point, 18 made $252 million at the worldwide box office, highest grossing slasher of all time. Halloween Kills made significantly less. Halloween Ends made less than Halloween Kills. So it's diminishing returns. Again, we have to be careful not to outstay your welcome. And, we Halloween fans will be there day one, but we are like, that this is an exact number, but, for all intents and purposes, we're like, 3% of the general movie going audience. And so, there are people that are confused as well. I mean, I remember when Halloween 18 was coming out and Jamie Lee Curtis was in it, there was general movie-going audience, even some horror fans, because remember, just because you're a horror fan doesn't mean you like Halloween and doesn't mean you know everything about Halloween. I know horror fans that know nothing about Halloween. And so you can be a horror fan and not a Halloween fan, just as you can be a Halloween fan and not a Freddy fan. And so there were some people that were like, Jamie Lee Curtis is in it? I thought she died in the last one, not realizing that, no, this is actually a direct sequel to the original and they're racing all the ones, you got to preface it and you got to put it, and you got to qualify everything as Halloween fans, although we're used to doing that. And so, you do another one now, even without Jamie Lee Curtis, people are going to be like, well, but didn't he die in the last one? And just all this kind of stuff. Like, it's just, I don't think doing one now is the right time for it. I think we do need, you need to let things marinate for a while. But we want to strike while the iron's hot. Yes, but the iron was less hot with each installment, and so you got to be careful.
Well, and I was telling this to my brother a couple weekends back on my birthday when him and my mother took me out to dinner. He's a passionate comic book fan, like hardcore comic book fan. And comic book movies are not doing well right now. Yeah, you got the occasional, like the one with Deadpool and Wolverine, but let's be real. If Deadpool was flying solo in that, it probably would have done okay. But when you look at what Deadpool did versus the Deadpool 2, what really helped Deadpool 3 was the combination of Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds playing these characters, and certainly and of course, a lot of cameos and whatever and whatnot. And then the Spider-Man movie, again, same reason. You had the 3 big Spider-Man all in one movie together. If it was just the kid, Tom Holland, I don't know if it would have done as well. And I think the reason for that is and what I was telling my brother is you're always going to have the comic book fans who are loyal and passionate who will go see these movies. Doesn't matter how many Superman movies, Batman movies, and this, that, and another. Having said that, you can't just rely on the comic book fans to bring in the big numbers at the box office, because a big chunk of those numbers are the average moviegoers and just the general, movie fans who wants to go see a movie. And when it comes to comic book movies, for the average moviegoer, I think they're comic book movied out. Like, it's like we've seen it. Like, how many times do I need to see the hero's journey, the villain get the upper hand in the second act, and then the hero comes back and saves the day, the end? That's the basic premise of a comic book film. You can tell it any which way you want and recycle it, but that's basically a comic book movie in a nutshell.
Right.
I don't need to go and see it again. You know what I mean? And the average moviegoer isn't going to want to go see, like, really? Do I need to see another Superman movie? Do I need to see another Batman movie? No, they're not. So yes, the hardcore fans are going to always go. I'm not denying that. But where they're losing now at the box office is that because of just, I mean, Jesus, man, they had like fucking 30 Avengers movies, not Avengers alone, but like as far as the cinematic universe of Avengers with the standalone films plus the Avengers movies and whatnot. I mean, like it's like you get to a point where enough is enough. Right. And people, like the average person isn't going to, and it's the same thing with Halloween. It's no different. Yes, it's, comic book movies and horror movies are not on the same level, but as far as the fan base goes, it's the same. Halloween fans are going to go see the movie, but the average moviegoer is going to be like, I don't need to see another Michael Myers movie.
No, you're right. And I just want to address something in the chat because, some people have said, and they're right, that, Halloween Kills and Ends debuted on Peacock as well, day and date. And that's, suggesting that's why they didn't make as much. Well, look, there's no doubt that when you do that, that will affect the box office. But it's also important to note that generally speaking, slasher sequels, I speak generally, there are examples of ones that make more, but generally speaking, slasher sequels will make less than their predecessors. And there's a variety of reasons for that. Franchise fatigue, curiosity fatigue. The first installment, people are really excited. Oh my God, this is amazing. This is great. The reviews for Halloween Kills were not nearly as positive as the review. Actually, they were far less negative than the reviews for Halloween 18. So that word of mouth can travel, and people, who maybe wanted to go see it in the movie theater have chosen not to, and instead don't see it at all, or see it at home, but otherwise would have gone to, if the reviews had been positive. Well, I don't want to watch it on Peacock. I want to go to the theater. But because the reviews were negative, and because the curiosity and, word of mouth, that can also affect where they see it as well. So yes, it is true that it has an impact, but I don't necessarily believe that Halloween Kills would have made an extra $100 million at the box office had there been no day and date, and so or no Peacock release. Definitely has an effect. It's absolutely good to point out, but generally speaking, slashers, they make less anyway. And there was a big lead up to Halloween 18. There was a big lead up. It was big. It was huge. People were excited about it. Obviously Halloween Kills was in the middle of a pandemic, and that's why they did that. But I don't think that automatically means that Halloween Kills would have also made $252 million at the box office. The $252 million at the box office is not the rule. It's the exception. And it was exceptional, and it was not, it was unusual. That's not, it's a reason why that, you don't normally see that kind of thing. So I get it, and it's absolutely valid to point it out, but I don't think that had it not been there, that automatically means it would have made as much or more. And so I do think that, you know, as Tony pointed out, there is a general movie-going audience that is the vast majority and largest bulk of your audience. And once
that's the big time, because really, when you think
that's
about
the big
it,
time. And once the curiosity wears off and the novelty wears off, they aren't necessarily going to the sequels like they were to the originals.
And you got to think of it like this: for both genres, comic book and horror, after opening weekend, right, which is your hardcore fan base who's going to go see it, you need to rely on week 2 for the average goers, right? To keep generating that revenue, because you're going to get a few of the hardcore people go back to see it again, right? I usually, unless I mean, the last time I saw a movie twice in theaters was The Conjuring.
Right.
So how long ago was that?
12 years ago.
12 years ago. That's the last time I saw a movie twice in theaters. Yeah. It's very rarely do I ever. Scream was one. Titanic was another one. I could probably count on my hands the movies that I've seen multiple times. And I don't do it that often. And so I think there's I think for the genres as a whole, Halloween, for example, comic books, there's a huge fatigue for the average goer.
Yes, and 100%.
It's just like they're all going to be like, well, I've seen this. You know what I mean? They're not, like they don't want to spend their money on that. You know, so they want something new. Yeah,
and to be fair, I mean, don't for people out there that might be, don't misunderstand me. Halloween Kills was still successful. Halloween Ends was still successful. When I say diminishing returns, I mean that we're not going up. We're going down. And yes, absolutely, the release on Peacock is because of it. But I'm not convinced that it had it not been released, it would have made as much or more, just by statistical evidence of how these things usually go, because of the sociological behavior of the general movie-going audience, not just Halloween fans. And that's why you see trailers are marketed. Studios know it's not that they don't have to appeal to us or appease us. They do, but they know we will be there day one no matter what. And part of the reason why you will often see a lot in trailers, or the way that trailers are cut nowadays, why did they show that? Why did they show this? Because they're not for me. They're not for you. They're for your soccer mom next door and your T-ball dad down the street who likes horror movies, but, and knows about Michael Myers and may want to go see a horror movie around Halloween time. That's who it's for. And that's your largest, that's the reason why, listen, it wasn't $252 million of Halloween fans. Right? It was Halloween fans and horror fans and people. Oh, I remember Jamie Lee Curtis. Oh, that's good. And Jamie Lee Curtis fans, and that can wear thin. And Halloween Kills reviews were in the dumpster. They weren't nearly as positive as 18 and Ends.
I think that's also a big reason why Tom Cruise's Mission Impossible isn't hitting the home run that I'm sure that he was hoping for. It's because, I'm going to go see it this weekend because I love the franchise. And it's taken me a minute to go see it.
Sure.
But I think people are also fatigued on that. You know what I mean? It's just like, all right, he's hanging from a plane again. All right, we've seen that. You know what I mean? And I'm not look, bro's got balls of steel.
Jesus.
The dude.
It's all that Scientology.
Hats off to all the crazy stunts, but it's just like,
it's crazy.
People have seen it, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I think for the average moviegoer, they're looking at it like, nah, I've seen enough.
Well, it becomes
Mission Impossible movies. I'm good.
The Mission Impossible movies have become a vehicle to just showcase Tom Cruise stunts, right. and so
and they're great, they're cool, and they're great,
and they're cool as shit. But rather than seeing and I'm not saying that these movies aren't great, but I'm just saying they've exponentially become that, and I hear that I haven't seen part 8 either, but I hear it's just like I hear that the story is okay, but it's really just all about Tom Cruise, and some people kind of they grow tired of that. They want a good story and maybe one crazy stunt or something. But look, and it's also the generation. There is an entire generation, Tony, an entire generation growing up right now that are perfectly fine and as a matter of fact, would rather sit on their bed and watch a Tom Cruise Mission Impossible movie on a 6.7-inch screen and just watch it there. And, or, there's an entire generation that doesn't give a shit about going to the movies. And so,
well, I think to be fair, there's two things to that. One,
it's a big issue.
It's, there's, ticket prices, concession. It's not cheap.
It's not cheap.
And you also, in this day and age, you have a lot more rude people at the theaters on their phones, laughing, talking.
That's part of it.
Why am I going to spend all this money to go see a movie to deal with idiots, on their phone and whatnot? But money for sure is a big factor. And look, there is something.
It's definitely part of it. It's definitely part of it.
There is something to be said of the convenience of cuddling up on your couch with your significant other and watching a movie versus driving out to the theater. But there is something to be said about experiencing the movie on the big screen as well.
100%. Let me see. We got to get through these here. Billy Bob, $4.99.
Yeah, I got to get going.
Gentlemen, what are your thoughts on an open world Halloween game? I've talked about it. I have a McRae Live on it.
I don't even know what that reference means.
Like Grand Theft Auto, where you can play the missions or you can just roam around. Would you want that experience to be? Would it be like Friday 13th? No, I have a McRae Live on my channel. Where I talk about a Halloween game, exactly that. Open world, traveling around Haddonfield. There's, you can play the missions of the game, or you can just fart around and fuck off and drive around and all that kind of shit. I would love to see that. I think that'd be awesome. It would cost way too much. It's not going to happen. And I don't mean like the Friday the 13th game where you're just like walking around. I mean like full on. You drive from Haddonfield to Russellville to Smiths Grove. Like it's like Grand Theft Auto, but it's Halloween. Lost Boy says, Final Destination Bloodlines shockingly has beaten Halloween 2018 at the box office with $273 million so far. But I don't think, of course, everybody's tossing around labels loosely nowadays. I would not classify, although maybe it is, Bloodlines as the Final Destination movies as a slasher movie. It doesn't mean there isn't blood and there aren't blades that cause things.
I call them comedic horror movies. They're fun. They're over the top. Don't take it serious. Let's just have a good time and let's see how we can kill these people creatively next. That's all it is. Yeah. So I don't know. I'd have to look it up if it's considered a slasher, but I don't think it is. I know people like to, it's a slasher, comedic, sci-fi, horror, drama. Like, stop it. Kyle Buckley, yo fellas, do you guys have any insight on what's going on with the Halloween TV series? I do not. I'm talking to studio producers every day.
Tony is dialed in. Tony is locked in. I have no
idea.
I do not. Dean Renner, been a member for 7 months. Thank you, Dean. Says, hey, Dave, speaking of the series, have you heard anything about this apparent change or shakeup at Miramax? Would that affect the Halloween series? I did hear about that. It could. It also could not. It depends on how far along they are in development. It depends on whether somebody new comes along and sees, wants to act certain things, doesn't see the value. I don't see the value in this. There's a lot of nuance, so I'm not really sure how it plays into it.
Studios do that all the time anyways. This is, they always do shakeups.
If the Halloween TV series, and I would have guessed that we would have heard a lot more about it by now, but if it is well into development, there's scripts, there's a producer, there's this, that, and the other, then I think there's still a very good chance that it could come along. If it is still in early development, like they're just kind of trying to figure out what to do with a new boss at the helm, there may be a chance that, once they go over the books and they go, we're going to spend what on what? Nah. I mean, but then again, they also acquired the rights to do this. And so, they got to make their money back. And so, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But I haven't heard anything specific yet. Music Man sends in a generous super chat. Thank you, Music Man. And says, Halloween should take place during the Spanish Inquisition.
I saw that earlier.
That'd be funny. Why not during the birth of Christ? I mean, just like that. I think, get Jesus in there. I mean, why not? I mean, Jesus takes on Michael Myers. That would be amazing. I'm down for it.
Baby Jesus versus Michael Myers.
Yes, Baby Jesus versus Michael Myers. I'm in. It's like a Family Guy episode.
Speaking of Baby Jesus, I will be very, very, because I know Tom Cruise is doing Days of Thunder 2 with Jeff Gordon.
He is.
But man, I'm just thinking it'd be great if he asked Will Ferrell to show up as Ricky Bobby.
Oh, that'd be funny.
That would be awesome to see Tom Cruise's character in Days of Thunder and Will Ferrell's Ricky Bobby character.
He's just doing everything.
All
his old hits.
He's playing. Is I don't like
the old hits.
He's so good in movies like A Few Good Men, Color of Money, Rain Man, The Firm. It's like, bro, branch out, man. Like, I get you want to get the hits out of the way because I know he's getting up there in age. I know he's doing another Top Gun. And whatnot. And it's just like, but he's very versatile, but he's pigeonholed himself into this action, whatever. And I get it, but
I think Tom Cruise sees himself as a savior. I think he's very likable. I like Tom Cruise as an actor, but he's also very creepy because he's almost too perfect. I looked this up one time, why Tom Cruise is so eerie. But there's an eeriness about him. He's so charming. He's like a what's his face in American Psycho. But anyway, I can't help but think that he feels that he's this savior that has to save the movie. So every movie he's going to do has got to be like big blockbuster. So he's just returning to all his old films.
I think the summer blockbuster that he's thinking of that we grew up with in the 80s. And look, I mean, there's no argument. Like when I say my childhood in the 80s, Tom Cruise's name's going to be right there because he was a part of our childhood. All his big movies,
and Mission Impossible 8 has still made $500 million. I mean, it's still doing all right.
But to take that approach of you're the savior or whatnot, but I don't know, but that's what I suspect. But movie watching today is just so different. We were just talking about this, during the stream about, I just watched a really good movie that was made by Apple Television.
Right.
That could have easily been a summer blockbuster film. They could have, but they released it, so I just think the structure of, that's what I mean by, I think the days of theaters are you're going to see more and more theaters close. I'm not saying movie theaters are going to go away entirely, but I think you're just going to see it restructured because of the fact that these streaming services are now making movies themselves that are solid. Like I said, I was really impressed with this Fountain of Youth movie. Mm-hmm. I didn't know it's the first time I've ever watched a movie made by Apple TV. You know what I mean? Like I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
I didn't know if it was going to be any good, and it turned out to be. It was a fun adventure film. Kind of reminded me of National Treasure with Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
So I think that plays a big part of how we see things now. It's just
No, look, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. There's a lot of truth to what you're saying, and the movie theaters are struggling. They are, and that's a big part of it. I'll just read this. I looked this up. Why Tom Cruise is so creepy. The uncanny valley of personality. Cruise's relentless positivity, and he is relentless in his positivity.
Well, he's relentless positive on camera.
Well, that's true. That's true. Cruise's relentless positivity, unwavering eye contact, perfect smile, and polished demeanor can feel almost too perfect, to the point where it triggers a subconscious discomfort. It's similar to the uncanny valley effect, where something is almost human but not quite, and it unsettles us. He's so charismatic that it starts to feel unnatural.
He does do a good job at really, he does a very good job of blending in, because rarely do you ever see paparazzis capturing him just on an everyday outing.
Oh, they're probably terrified because of Scientology.
That too. But no, for real. So like the only time we do see him is when he's polished, is when he's in front of the camera, is when he's on a red carpet or whatever. You know, so you don't see the everyday, I've got my ball cap on, wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt. You know what I mean? You never see that shit. And I find that amazing in this day and age with how many people with cameras and shit that you never see him like, which, okay, I can get that. That is eerie, but he's just managed to keep himself away from all. Now I know he's always making movies because I guess he's doing like 8 movies right now.
Yeah, well, he's because I think it's he's got this self-absorbed, grandiose, obscured, weird, distorted view of his own self-importance. And I'm not saying he's not a good actor and he hasn't done well and he hasn't done great, you know, for movie theaters, but he comes across that way. He's so perfect, so charismatic, so on all the time that it makes me scared of him.
Well, in fact, the only time I've ever
I wouldn't want to see him pissed off. Well, that's how eerie he
time I've ever thought that I saw the real Tom Cruise in a genuine moment where he was relaxed and he was just laughing his ass off. There's an old interview where him and Dustin Hoffman they're promoting Rain Man. Yeah. And they're sitting on a couch.
Wapner.
And Hoffman, I mean, the interviewer is asking Tom Cruise a question, but then Hoffman rips this loud fart. I mean, loud.
Right.
And Cruise could not stop laughing. Right. And I felt in that moment right there, that showed more of him just being human, that he can laugh. It doesn't always have to be, you know,
right. Well, he still laughs, but no, I get you.
But you know what I mean? Like, because everything else you see him in, it's the right answers.
Yep.
Everything's perfect.
Oh yeah, he's always polished.
When he's in front of the
shaking hands, kissing babies, like he's the goddamn Pope. Like, I mean, it's you know, he's going to movie theaters going, I love the movie theater experience. Thank you. All of you.
Do you though, or do you just want our money, Tom?
This is why I do this. This is for you, all of you. Thank you. Tom, shut up. You know, like, that's all I kind of feel.
You just want my money, bro.
Yeah. Josh McKenna, $9.99. Jamie Lee Curtis is outspoken. Has she ever called out Tony Moran? If not, why hasn't she? Because I don't think she fucking knows who Tony Moran is, and I don't think she cares. I think she probably just forgets who she is or who he is. And then finally, Brandon Collins, $5 says, "Did you see Cruise is getting an honorary Oscar?" I did. Ford will be 83 in 6 weeks. 6 weeks. His birthday. Oh yeah. No. Less than that. His birthday is July 13th. Time is ticking. Give the real last movie star an Oscar already. I agree. I understand why they want to give Tom Cruise an honorary Oscar. Give Harrison Ford a goddamn honorary Oscar.
I also think it's a slap in the face to Tom Cruise too, because I'll tell you what, that's basically getting that's. I've always looked at the honorary Oscar as basically a participation trophy, really, because we're not giving you an Oscar for your merits, for your performance. We're just saying, hey, here you go. Thank you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, it's
not
really
for a performance. It's just saying, here, thank you for being a part of the movie industry.
It's the Oscars Lifetime Achievement Award. That's what it is. So it does have merit to it, but it's not for a specific individual performance. That is true. That is true. But it's the Oscars Lifetime Achievement Award. And then I think
about his movie, like, he could have been nominated for Interview. He was good in that. That's another one. Like, he was great in
Was he nominated for Rain Man?
I think Dustin was. I don't think he was.
Dustin was, okay.
Someone might know that one. I don't think. Someone probably knows if he's been nominated. But I'm just saying, he's got like A Few Good Men. He could have been nominated. Like, he's got the range to be a talented actor.
Yes.
To earn an Academy Award for his merits.
Yes.
And I hope that that's what he focuses on now in the later, as he's getting older.
Right.
Because I just like we said, like, you know, how many times you're going to go to Days of Thunder? Like, are we going to get a Cocktail 2 now as well? You know what I mean?
Right. What the Cocktail 2, Risky Business 2. He's going to be dancing in his underwear. No.
Now he
Take
could
that old records off the shelf.
Now what he could do for, like, if you want to do a trilogy, because Color of Money is actually a sequel. Paul Newman's character. What's the first? What did Paul Newman do?
I forget the name of it.
I forget the name of it, but he could do the trilogy of that. He could be now the Paul Newman character, older with a new young pool player.
Yes.
That you could do.
Yeah.
You know? So, but no, I'm just going to drive around a NASCAR with Jeff Gordon.
That's it. All right, folks, listen. That is going to do it for our 200th episode of Two Dudes and Some Bullshit. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight, talking Halloween, talking movies. We love you guys. Thank you for sticking around. Tony and I will be back soon with another episode of Two Dudes and Some Bullshit. This time,
perks.
Yes, the It's Me Billy Chapter 2 perks. I think there's 4 people.
The Hustler. Thank you. That was the movie.
There you go, The Hustler. We're going to start diving into those. That's going to be a lot of fun. So again, thank you for 200 episodes. Absolutely amazing. You guys are awesome. If you're watching after the fact, jump into the comment section. Let Tony and I know your thoughts on anything we had to say here today. We'd really appreciate it. Tony, any last things you'd like to say?
No, this was great, and it'll be fun to see you guys again soon.
That's right. All right, folks, have a great rest of your Wednesday night. That's going to do it for us. Have a very scary Halloween.